But of course, the backdrop is he wants to be the next American president, and how all of this impacts that political run. But that is months away as we see the jet begin to take off. Tomorrow will be all about what happens in the courtroom in New York. I'm coming to the end of my programme as you watch the jet take off. A pointer to viewers here in the UK. They will have the 6 o'clock news with Rita Chakrabarti in a moment or two, but we will also continue this coverage with Yalda Hakim taking us through those events, both in Florida and as Donald Trump heads to New York. Thanks for watching. See you next time.
Thank you so much. I'm Yalda Hakim and you're watching BBC News. We're going to continue our coverage of former US President Donald Trump, who has left his golf resort in Florida and is on his way to Manhattan, where on Tuesday he will face criminal charges related to a hush money payment given to adult film star Stormy Daniels. We just saw his motorcade travelling to the airport, and we've just seen the flight there leaving Florida. There were also crowds of supporters lined the roads to cheer him on. The specifics, as Matthew was saying, of the charges he faces in New York have not been revealed, but his legal team say he will plead innocent and vigorously contest the case. But you're seeing live images right now of Donald Trump's aircraft leaving Florida. With me on the line is our correspondent Gary O'Donoghue, who's live in New York. And Gary, in about 3 hours' time, you're expecting former President Donald Trump to land there in LaGuardia. Ambassador Bolton, thank you so much for joining us here on the programme.
Glad to do it.
Now, we will be following developments very closely as former US President Donald Trump makes his way from Florida to New York, to Manhattan, where on Tuesday he will face criminal charges related to hush money payments given to adult film star Stormy Daniels. And as soon as we have more images coming in from New York, we will be going back to our correspondents there. But let's go to the rest of the day's news, and we turn now to Finland and the news that their bid to join NATO is about to become reality. NATO's Secretary General said the country will officially become a member of the military alliance on Tuesday. It's been fast-tracked because of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Here's Jens Stoltenberg making the announcement from Brussels. Have a listen. Alexander Stubb, always good to talk to you. Thank you so much for joining us here on the programme. Around the world and across the UK, this is BBC News.
You're a raver.
Do I look like a raver?
I've got bass in a backpack. This is amazing.
Dancing for like 4 or 5 hours of a gig, you could generate about 800 kilowatt hours of thermal energy.
Right, so shall we give it a taste then? It's my favourite.
We're really talking to the plants and they're telling us how happy they are.
It can fly, but it can also float on water.
Oh my God, that came by quick.
It's all about augmented reality.
Beautiful, right? Beautiful.
Totally and utterly immersed in another world there.
Your Tech Update. Click on BBC News.
You're live with BBC News. I'm Yalda Hakim. Let's go to Russia now, and the authorities have detained a woman, Daria Trepova, in connection with the murder of a well-known pro-Kremlin blogger who was killed on Sunday after an explosion in a cafe. This is Vladimir Tatarsky, killed by a bomb in St. Petersburg. We can take a look at some video footage that shows the blogger being handed a statue in a cafe in St. Petersburg before an explosion kills him. Russian officials believe a bomb may have been concealed in a statue, but it's unclear if this was the actual statue. It's important to note that the BBC has not verified the source of the blast, and there are conflicting reports. Daria Trepova's details were added to the Interior Ministry's wanted list hours before she was detained. Russia's security service has accused Ukraine of being behind the blast, but Ukrainian officials have denied it. Hugo Bachega reporting there from Kiev. Let's just show you these pictures again of former US President Donald Trump leaving his home in Florida and boarding that aircraft on his way to Manhattan, where on Tuesday he'll face criminal charges related to a hush money payment given to adult film star Stormy Daniels. He was seen earlier getting out of his motorcade and boarding that aircraft, and we saw a number of supporters lining the road cheering him on there in Florida. And as you can see, the aircraft leaving there. Let's just also show you these live pictures of New York. He's due to land at LaGuardia Airport in New York. The flight between Palm Beach and New York is just under 3 hours, but you're looking at live images there of Trump Tower. We'll be back in the next few minutes with all the latest headlines. Live from London, this is BBC News. Donald Trump leaves Florida to fly to New York, where he faces charges related to alleged hush money payments to a porn star. Finland will join NATO tomorrow, a day after the leader credited with steering its application lost a tight-run election. The moments before a pro-war blogger was killed in an explosion in St. Petersburg, a 26-year-old woman is detained by Russian authorities. And in Afghanistan, my report inside the Taliban's aggressive campaign to round up drug addicts and force them into rehab in an attempt to dry them out. We start in Afghanistan. Many of you may be aware of my reporting from inside the country since the Taliban takeover. Well, they've now been in power for the past 18 months and much has changed for Afghans and Afghanistan. One thing that remains, though, is the scourge of drug addiction. I was in the country not long ago where I saw the Taliban's aggressive campaign to round up addicts from the streets, force them into rehab in an attempt to dry them out. This is our report. And I just want to point out my online piece that I've written. It's currently on the website, on the front page. If you go there, usual place, bbc.com/news, a profile on one of the drug addicts who is now in that rehab centre, as well as some background on Afghanistan's drugs problem over the last 20 years, and then the Taliban's aggressive campaign to try and get some of those addicts off the streets, especially in the capital, Kabul. Usual place, bbc.com/news. Around the world and across the UK, this is BBC News.
Stories of success, stories of failure, stories of strength, stories of corruption, stories of hope, stories of despair, stories of optimism, resilience, achievement, triumph. Remarkable stories from different places around the world. Join us for a series of stunning award-winning documentaries. Why Stories on BBC News.
You're live with BBC News. I'm Yalda Hakim. Here in the UK, the murder of 9-year-old Olivia Pratt-Corbell in her own home in Liverpool last year shocked the entire country. She was shot dead by a gunman who was chasing a fellow drug dealer and entered her home. Today, her killer, Thomas Cashman, was sentenced to a minimum of 42 years in prison, meaning he'll be in his mid-70s before he can be considered for early release. Cashman refused to appear in the dock for the sentencing, but the judge told the court that Olivia's future had been cruelly snatched away and that Cashman's actions were chilling. Our correspondent Judith Moritz reports.
It's tricky.
Okay, Matt, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us here on BBC News. Don't go anywhere. We've got lots more coming up here on BBC News. But of course, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm at BBC Yalda Hakim. Stay where you are. Live from London, you're live with BBC News. Donald Trump has left Florida and is on his way to New York, where he faces charges related to alleged hush money payments to a porn star. The moments before a pro-war blogger was killed in an explosion in St. Petersburg, a 26-year-old woman is detained by Russian authorities. Finland will join NATO tomorrow, a day after the leader credited with steering its application lost a tight-run election. And in Afghanistan, my report inside the Taliban's aggressive campaign to round up drug addicts and force them into rehab in an attempt to dry them out. Former US President Donald Trump has left Florida and is on his way to Manhattan, where on Tuesday he will face criminal charges related to a hush money payment given to adult film star Stormy Daniels. Here is his plane leaving the airport in Florida. The specifics of the charges he faces in New York have not been revealed, but his legal team say he will plead innocent and vigorously contest the case. On Tuesday, Donald Trump will likely be fingerprinted and photographed, and then he will appear before a judge. He is the first former US president to face criminal charges. OK, Gary, thank you so much for that update. And Trump's attorneys have asked a New York judge not to allow cameras inside the courtroom to broadcast the hearing tomorrow. And as we've been reporting, we have heard from Donald Trump in a statement that he made on Truth Social, saying heading to New York, make America great again, witch hunt as our once great country is going to hell. Around the world and across the UK, this is BBC News.
There are people who do not know. People of colour fought and died alongside their British counterparts in both world wars.
A large crowd gathered to remember a generation who crossed oceans to help Britain during World War II.
Nothing short of a disgrace that the service of these brave men who came all those 1,000 miles from the Caribbean to help this country in its hour of need has been pretty much erased from the history books.
Glenn's uncles came over from the Caribbean to train with the RAF in nearby Hunmanby. He wanted a memorial for them and thousands of others who volunteered to serve.
Oh, very good, very enlightening, and I hope people do take notice.
I'm proud, my God, I am proud to meet a few of my comrades, you know. Some is missing, obviously.
You're live with BBC News. I'm Yalda Hakim. Here in the UK, the murder of 9-year-old Olivia Pratt-Corbell in her own home in Liverpool last year shocked the entire country. She was shot dead by a gunman who was chasing a fellow drug dealer and entered her home. Today, her killer Thomas Cashman was sentenced to a minimum of 42 years in prison, meaning he'll be in his mid-70s before he can be considered for early release. Cashman refused to appear in the dock for sentencing, but the judge told the court that Olivia's future had been cruelly snatched away and that Cashman's actions were chilling. Judith Moritz reports.
Tragic situation for over half the population.
Indeed. General Petraeus, always great to talk to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Yalda.
We'll be back with all the latest headlines. We will be speaking to the former CEO of Google, Eric Schmidt, who'll be talking to us about his concerns around artificial intelligence. Stay with us. Live from London, this is BBC News. Donald Trump has left Florida and is on his way to New York, where he faces charges related to alleged hush money payments to a porn star. Finland will join NATO tomorrow, a day after the leader credited with steering its application lost a tight-run election. The moments before a pro-war blogger was killed in an explosion in St. Petersburg, a 26-year-old woman is detained by Russian authorities. And in Afghanistan, my report inside the Taliban's aggressive campaign to round up drug addicts and force them into rehab in an attempt to drive them out. There's been much talk over the last few weeks on the future of artificial intelligence with the introduction of technology which can write essays and solve computer coding in a human-like way. Concerns have been raised over privacy, the spreading of misinformation, with calls to pause development over safety fears. There is also concern about AI's impact on employment. A report from investment bank Goldman Sachs said AI could replace the equivalent of 300 million full-time jobs. But it added widespread use of AI could eventually increase the total annual value of goods and services produced globally by 7%. Well, we can speak now to Eric Schmidt, former CEO of Google. Thank you very much, Eric, for joining us here on the programme. I know you've been following this and working on this for a very long time. How concerned should we be? That was Alexander Stubb speaking to me a little earlier. He is Finland's former Prime Minister. You're watching BBC News.
It's the world's biggest music competition, and today work begins to bring this year's show to life. The arena keys have been officially handed over to those in charge of building the set here in Liverpool.
So today starts the next chapter on the Eurovision journey. So after months and months of planning and preparation in partnership, we're now into the build phase.
So there's going to be 37 different delegations here. How difficult is it to try and keep them all happy?
It's a really, really fun job to be working with those delegations with all their creative ideas.
We have 40 seconds to turn the stage around in between each of the acts. So it's this incredible machine, this incredible team of people that are moving all of the props on and off, moving all of the artists on and off around the venue, from the stage to the green room to the dressing room.
And here's how it's hoped it will look when the eyes of the world tune in for that final.
Live from London, you're with BBC News. Twitter has started removing verification badges from accounts which had a blue tick after announcing that users would need to pay $8 a month to keep their blue badge status. Take a look at this. It's the Twitter account of the New York Times. It used to have a blue tick, but it was removed after the US newspaper said it would not pay to remain verified. It prompted this angry post from Twitter's owner, Elon Musk, who said the real tragedy of the New York Times is that their propaganda isn't even interesting. And other media organisations have seen changes too. Last December, Twitter introduced gold badges like the one you can see here on the Twitter page used by BBC News in the UK. These gold badges are used for business organisations rather than individuals. Now Twitter has said it will charge $1,000 a month for it. Many news organisations, including CNN, the Los Angeles Times and the Washington Post, who have also said they'll not pay for Twitter verification, still have their gold ticks for now. Celebrities are caught up in it too. Among those who've refused to pay are the American basketball great LeBron James. Well, social media consultant Matt Lavara says this is an example of Elon Musk saying he's going to do one thing, then doing something else. Have a listen. That was Matt Navarra there. You're watching BBC News. Members of England's largest teaching union are to strike for another 2 days after voting by an overwhelming majority to reject the latest pay offer from the government. The Education Secretary called it extremely disappointing and said it will result in more disruption for children. Our education editor, Branwen Jeffries, reports. Bill Nelson there. Now here's the weather with Elizabeth Rizzini.
Hello there, good evening. Glorious blue skies, plenty of spring sunshine across most of the UK today.